43-year-old Travis Campbell tested positive for COVID-19 fairly recently on July 22nd. And it wasn't long before his symptoms worsened and he was hospitalized. Now, he initially didn't think it was important to get vaccinated. He was one of these people who followed through with vaccine hesitancy. A huge portion of our country unfortunately does. And now he regrets it. And so he's been filming himself in his hospital bed, urging his community to get vaccinated. The virus also infected his wife and kids. Luckily, they have not been hospitalized. It seems like they're gonna be okay, but he's really struggling right now. So I wanna warn you guys, obviously, this is a man in a hospital. These are difficult videos to watch, but I commend him for sharing his story with people because this is the story that people need to be aware of. Let's watch.
Last night, my wife and I had to make a decision if I was going to allow them to put me on a ventilator. Worst case scenario. And I don't want to be on one, but I want to live. I messed up big time, guys. I didn't get the vaccine. That's okay. I made a mistake. I admit it. And I'm taking my responsibilities now. So please, for the love of God, if you really want to have a chance, don't fall numb to all the TV, Roderick, and social media. Just protect yourself.
Oh man, my heart goes out to this guy, and it takes a lot of humility and a lot of courage to put those videos out there because he cares. He cares about people. He wants them to avoid making the same mistake that he did. He also said, "I'm testifying to all of my bulletproof friends holding out. It's time to protect your family. It's not worth getting long-term lung damage or death. Please go get the vaccine. The second wave is coming." Well, it's already here, unfortunately, and is going to be stronger than the first. And now we're also hearing about not just the Delta variant, but the Delta Plus variant, which is starting to spread in Europe. So it continues to get worse, and you have a way of protecting yourself. Please do it.
I'm actually amazed by them. Like, if I didn't have the vaccine already, I'd be so worried. The Delta variant is super contagious. It's even more contagious than the original one. So that's why I think like 99% of the cases in the UK last I checked was the Delta variant. And so these folks are walking around without masks, walking into big indoor places with a massively contagious disease out there, and they're not vaccinated. Like, people who are vaccinated are worried. Sometimes they'll have masks and they'll be worried, right? And you don't have the vaccine and you're just gonna walk into a death trap? You guys are nuts.
It reminds me of the story we did about the Ozarks and how people are like partying, they're having a great time. In fact, there was a woman there who decided to wear a mask and they were harassing this woman for doing so. Because it's become a culture war issue for people when this is the furthest thing from a culture war issue. This is a public health issue. And this is about keeping yourself and your loved ones safe from a highly contagious virus that continues to mutate. We're seeing more and more cases of young people hospitalized right now. I just saw a video today of an 8-year-old who was on a ventilator in the hospital because of COVID. Like,
look, and our kids aren't vaccinated, right? Because under 12, you can't get vaccinated. So it also affects us. Now, it's more unlikely for kids, but still, you got an 8-year-old on a ventilator, and so you're not just taking a chance with your life, you're taking a chance with other people's lives. And we didn't sign up for that. But look, guys, sometimes I get super frustrated and say all sorts of terrible, mean things about Republicans. I've been known to do that from time to time. And I think that most of the time they amply deserve it. And so, especially on this, and it's hard not to think of it in terms of political Darwinism. Like, you're part of a death cult. You chose to expose yourself to death, and then some of you died. Almost everyone who's dying is unvaccinated, and most of the unvaccinated, overwhelming majority, are Republicans. So that's part of the reason why, by the way, now Republican politicians are freaking out, and half of them have turned around because they're losing voters by the day. They're literally losing thousands of voters, and these elections in places like Georgia and Arizona are decided by thousands of votes.
That's right.
So,
yeah.
I mean, you can keep blocking Democratic voters, but your voters, you're encouraging them to die. But I say that all as a prelude to when you actually see a human being, and a guy, and somebody says, I made a mistake. Of course you want to reach out to that person, right? Of course, if you're a decent person, your heart goes out to them. And so I feel terrible for that guy. I hope he's okay. I hope his family's okay. And I hope that a lot of folks come back around to it. Look, I had a friend who got coronavirus who didn't believe in masks or vaccines. And yeah, he sent me a message from the hospital bed saying, whatever you do, wear a mask. I was wrong, right? And then later, of course, he got the vaccine, even though he had already had coronavirus. Because when you have it, you realize it ain't no joke. He said he was hospitalized, and it was the worst thing he's ever gone through in his life.
I found out just a few days ago that a childhood friend of mine died from coronavirus at the age of 40. She has 2 young kids. No, I mean, she didn't need to die. But I want to read from Kelly, and that's Travis Campbell's his wife, and because it's interesting to like hear from the people who didn't believe in the vaccine and now do. Like, what was their thinking? And she said, we just thought we were invincible and we weren't going to get it. And we've just been so busy, and we just moved, and we prolonged getting the vaccine. He just doesn't want anyone to have to endure the pain that he has. And if a vaccine will help them, that's what they need to do. And obviously I agree with her on that. And then one other thing, because I think this ends up getting left out of our conversations because we move on to other stories. I want to be clear about something. Like, we're hearing more and more about like possible vaccine mandates, on a local level, especially when it comes to going to certain businesses or enjoying certain public events. There's still some places in this country, there are rural parts of this country where it's still kind of difficult to get vaccinated, right? And so if they're going to implement mandates, I think it's important to ensure that they provide as much accessibility as humanly possible. But with that said, in most parts of the country, it is incredibly easy to get vaccinated. You can literally walk into a CVS, a Walgreens, a Rite Aid, no appointment, no nothing. And they vaccinate you for free, no questions asked. It's easy. And despite what some disinfo merchants are saying online, including pseudo-leftists, they do give you a giant amount of information regarding possible side effects and things like that. But the side effects pale in comparison to being hospitalized and dying from this virus. Or if you survive it, from having long-term organ damage as a result of this virus.
Yeah, side effect of not getting vaccinated is death. And so, look, if you notice, that guy from his hospital bed talked about social media and TV rhetoric. Why? It's conservative media that's driving the culture, right? And the cultural wars. And so we used to call them cultural wars, and before it was, an interesting piece of rhetoric. And guys, if you want to say happy holidays instead of Merry Christmas, I can assure you, or the vice versa, you want to say Merry Christmas, have at us. I can assure you, I don't know a single leftist who cares. Okay, no one cares. That's a good, safe place to have a culture war, right? Just Merry Christmas, like crazy. Say it like 1,000 times, we don't care. You can say it to me 2,000 times, I don't care. But when you do culture wars on a deadly disease, the war actually kills people, and it kills your own people. So I can't imagine anything more counterproductive and disastrous. So we're not like you guys. We don't think like, haha, we own the cons. And so since we own the conservatives and we live rent-free inside their heads, they didn't get the vaccine and they died, haha. We don't think that way. We actually want you to be healthy. We want to get you Medicare for all, so everyone has health care, including you and your loved ones. I know it's hard for you to believe because you've been taught the culture wars where everybody hates each other and you're supposed to own the libs, and you're gonna own the libs by not getting the vaccine, by telling people Merry Christmas and all these, and not drinking Starbucks coffee. What? That was a Tucker Carlson one. Okay, nobody's figured that one out. But you're not gonna own us by dying. So go please help yourself and your family by doing what doctors say, not what dumbass Tucker Carlson says. Thanks for watching the Young Turks. Really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.